Welcome to Dynasty Mode, the unofficial EA Sports college football game podcast. My name is Arky. Dimitri Revanos is out on assignment again. There is a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with this college football video game. We've already discussed the fact that we have a brand new NIL agreement in place for the current college football programs. That's right. They can all opt in. They can all say, give me some of that cash money, yo. And it's going to be important for this season, even though that there's not going to be a video game, because going into next season, we don't technically know what the rosters are going to completely look like. We technically don't know now, but we don't know definitely next year because it's a whole bunch of freshmen, a whole bunch of transfers, a whole bunch of stuff still has to happen. So this year, it's important to get this started because they can start developing the players that want to be in the video game. They can start putting their attributes onto the video game, and we'll see to what degree we get good face scans and such of these players to make them look as realistic as possible in the video game when they finally do opt in. But that does beg a question, though, that now that we have the ability for these players to be paid, what are we going to do about that very first video game? In particular, what are we going to do about the cover? The cover art is a big, big, big deal no matter what year you think it is. It's 2023, by the way. No matter what year next year will be, it's still going to be a big deal because it's an era of prestige. It's an era of pride. It's also an era of the game is back. And the very first game is going to be a very important game cover to be able to get correct. But who or what is going to be on the cover of it? That's a fascinating topic that I want to get into a little bit here on this particular podcast because there has been a new recent article written, an article, I say opinion piece, by a young feller named RJ Young over at Fox Sports. Was sent to me by our good friend and listener Will, who said, hey, check this out. So I did. So what this young man did, RJ Young, and maybe we get him on the podcast at some point, who knows, but we could reach out to him. By the way, you should reach out to your friends. Let them know that there's a podcast that specifically and only talks about this here video game. That's all we talk about, this video game and the reemergence of it and its history as well. So share however you want to share it socially. Get it out there. Subscribe, click the buttons. I don't care what you do. Just tell people. It's a good podcast. So anyway, RJ Young decided to rank his top 5 people he thinks should be on the cover of the new video game. Now let's take a look into what these names are and the problems and or promises that there might be there with it. First of all, he has number 5, Caleb Williams, quarterback USC. Well, it's hard to argue with the Heisman Trophy winner being your cover boy, but Caleb Williams is gone after this season. So he is not going to be in the 2024 release game next year, as far as the player who will be active, because he'll be in Madden. He'll be the next it guy. So that brings up an interesting question in and of itself. What does EA want to do and accomplish with this cover art? And I think it's pure and simple. I think one of the reasons EA fought so hard to be able to pay players to be in the game is because they want to put current players on the game. Remember the players we had on before, they were done. You know, whether you had Tim Tebow or whomever you had on the pod, they were done with their college eligibility so they could be on the video game. We've clearly never had a current player or a player that will be playing coming into the video game. But let's take a look at who that could possibly be. Crickets. Yeah. Because if you think about it, the dynamic superstar that we think should be on the cover of the game that will have the name and cover and image of every single young child and adult named me, that will have the most dynamic, the most interesting, the most name garnered person on the cover, I don't know it exists for next year, especially at this point. Caleb Williams makes sense right now because we're going into the new season. So if there was a college football 2024 coming out, this summer, and that would be technically about a month and a half from now. If there was that game, Caleb Williams, no doubt about it, that's the prize you go after. But he won't be there. And there's a decent chance he'll be a Heisman Trophy candidate, if not the winner, this next season. So there is reason to put a guy on the cover like that, but he'll be gone. And that makes another interesting point. These dynamic type players, boy, I'm using that word a lot, the D word, dynamic. These superstars that transcend just being college football players, but being into household names, they don't often come back to school when we know who they are. Now, last year would have been a phenomenal example if you had a couple. You had CJ Stroud, you had Bryce Young, you had Will Anderson, you had a few guys that were names that were clearly heads and shoulders above everybody else. You could have marketed with those cover athletes, and they would have been completely great candidates for it. This next year, Caleb Williams seems to me to be about the only guy that meets that level right now in May of 2023, going into a potential 2023 release. But as far as 2024, who are the young guys that we know could be that name? I don't know any, to be honest with you, that are that worthy right now. So we are in an interesting quandary where we will definitely have to wait to see how the season comes out to see who might be the powerhouse that returns. But we've had him come back before. You know, Tebow was a name, and then he came back. Johnny Manziel was a name. He came back. Cam Newton was a name. Cam Newton got out when the getting was good. Put it that way. So there have been names. Baker Mayfield was a name. Came back. There are guys who have come back. Jalen Hurts would have been a very interesting example too, especially going from one college to the other. Man, I love the argument. Let's keep discussing Bama or Sooner. So we've had them before. I just don't think, as of right now, we have them knowing into next year. In fact, the list for this year is pretty slim, with Caleb Williams being about the only guy I think that meets that test. But we allow some time to continue. He also adds number 4 on his list should be Trevor Lawrence. Come on. I don't think this game wants old players on it right now. Not that Trevor Lawrence is old or more than a few years away from being in college, but accolades aside from being a really good college football player at Clemson, he's an NFL guy now. Once you get a year or two past, you're attached to your team. Jalen Hurts is an Eagle right now. All right? Kyler Murray is in Arizona, if you can find him, because he's 5'4". These guys do move on and their identities become attached to something else, despite the fact that we as college football video game players will forever attach them to those specific universities. So I don't think you want to go back into the vault that much, if at all, unless you're doing some kind of legacy addition, which I think is something that they don't want to do. They may have to do something special for the very first one because we may be bereft of high-level talent. Even talents plural, if you wanted to make multi-cover art, which they have done for years and years and years, despite not having the game for years and years and years. Number 3, similar concept here from RJ Young, Joe Burrow at LSU. Joe Burrow had one season that was perhaps the most spectacular season we've seen ever. His output was insane, ridiculous. He was a personality coming out of the championship game. Oh, the cigar. Oh, Cigar Joe on the couch. Man, that all hits and it fits and it makes 100% sense, except we're on the Trevor Lawrence concept here. Joe Burrow is a Bengal now. Do we completely associate him with LSU? We definitely don't with Ohio State. So do we want to go back that far? Again, it's only a few years, but you start putting that distance between you. By the time it comes out next summer, it would have been what? Is going into his 5th year, right? I may be off on that, but 4th or 5th year as a Bengal? Brother, I think the ship has sailed on the Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. Here's a very fun one, RJ Young, and I'm so glad. This is the one, RJ Young, let me get you on the podcast just for talk about this one. Stetson Bennett, Georgia. This is the conversation we need to start having. Stetson Bennett will never play in the NFL. He will never see the field. And so we'll never have to associate him with right now being a Los Angeles Rams or next year being a XFL Guardian at some point. We'll never have to worry about any of that because Stetson Bennett is not good enough for that. But what Stetson Bennett is a college football legend on so many levels. One, he came in and took a guy's job. Wasn't even technically good enough to get the job at the start off of the season. And somehow, when the other guy got uninjured, was never bad enough to lose the job. And then he went on to win back-to-back national championships, never looking super great at all doing it in either season. Maybe never really in any game did he look spectacular. But he's a college football two-time defending national champion. Those guys are really hard to come by. Now, the worry is that he'll be another year removed from college. But again, we'll never see him in an NFL helmet, so we don't have to worry about that. But the fact that there's this and the fact that there's a rumor going around that may be substantiated that he went to school for 21 years, it feels like, and never graduated. Come on. What's more college football than that? Huh? Never going to class or going to class just enough to skirt by? I love the Stetson Bennett idea. And the fact that it's number 2 is a bummer to me because RJ, that's the grand slam of all grand slams. Stetson Bennett should be a top contender for all of those accolades alone. Yeah. It does leave us with the number 1 spot. The number 1 spot, RJ points out, is Nick Saban at Alabama. I get it. There is some validity to wanting to do something like this. One, it's never been done. It's never been done for the college football series, except for the early installations of Bill Walsh, right? Those have Bill Walsh on it. Outside the Bill Walsh era, it's been cover athletes. It's been mostly quarterbacks, a running back or two in the highlights, a receiver once in a blue moon, Larry Fitzgerald, shout out. But we've never seen coaches, especially modern coaches, right? So there is something to be said for that. And the most popular known entity in college football is Nick Saban. 6 national championships will do that for you. Maybe it's 7. Is it 6 at Alabama and 7 overall? It's a lot. Kirby Smart is the new name. It's the name that's won a couple in a row. But that doesn't have the same cachet and name value because Nick Saban's been a brand for a long time. So Nick Saban would be an interesting choice. But Nick Saban is also very much hated by a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of just folks who might be interested in the game. Nick Saban is a great coach because of things that he's done, like been open to innovate his offense and to accept the transfer portal as gingerly but as effectively as possible, and also his use of NIL. But this ain't a coach's game. We're not putting Bill Cowher back on the cover of a video game ever again. We're not doing coaches. Not doing it. No, I want coaches in the actual game. I want Nick Saban to say yes to his name, image, and likeness and to be put that into the video game. I want that aspect of Nick Saban. I want him on the sidelines in the game. I don't want him on the cover. This is a player's game. You don't, to me, if you are Electronic Arts, you don't go hoping for decades that you can pay players. Finally getting the opportunity to pay players. And on your first video game back since 2013, put a coach? That doesn't work for me. This is a player-driven game. The coaches are a part. The coaches are a big part. The game is the game. And the game within the game is the players. So I want the players on the cover. 100% of the time, zero doubt about it. RJ, I'm gonna try to get you on the show at some point. We talk about this. This is a great list. This is a lot of fun. But I'm on the firm side that this is a 100% chance there's going to be a player, and we probably won't know who that player is until probably October, maybe November this year. It's going to be a name that doesn't make a lot of sense to us. Now, remember how hot the name Will Levis got, out of Kentucky. Will Levis, a lot of people thought was going to be the third quarterback. Some even rumored to be the overall number one quarterback. A couple. But you can hype up as much as you want those types of players as often as you want. Who's going to be the player that can merit that? And that will also return for next year. And it doesn't just have to be a quarterback. It could be a really good running back. But they got to have some name value. And I know EA is probably going to go into this thinking one other thing. There's probably going to be one major cover artist. But when we think about when the new game comes out, I'm not discounting the fact that we might very well have ourselves multiple cover arts for the same playing system. So Xbox probably gets a couple. PlayStation gets a couple. They play around with PC, they may get a couple. I think what you're going to see is a chance, especially if no one becomes the breakout star that comes back. It's a great chance to feature a pretty good player or players, plural, from one team. I don't know. Just what I'm thinking. Because if you think about it this way, we're all in the world that we can just create whatever cover art we want, right? In fact, I'll tell you this. Remember when I told you I got the PS5 for Christmas? I still haven't unboxed it. I assume it's all there. It's probably too late to take it back now. It's at the end of May. Memorial Day is coming up. I can't take it back, probably. Maybe. I could sell it to somebody, I guess. I assume all the parts there, but I won't know because I only care about this one video game coming back, and that system I got is diskless. Or excuse me, it's it's diskless. It has no ability for me to want the game itself and to be able to put it in the system. I can't do it. It's all download. And I'm okay with that. But I'm still buying that first cover art back because I think there's something special about that. And I think Electronic Arts knows that aspect of it. No matter what they do with the game itself, I think that they're in a very interesting position trying to market this with their cover athlete. So it's not going to be Joe Burrow. It's not going to be Trevor Lawrence. I don't think it's going to be legacy of any kind. And it ain't Nick Saban. Nick Saban ain't getting on that cover. Chip Kelly is. I'm kidding. Well, that'd be a good one. No, he's not getting on that. No one's getting on that cover except for a current athlete or athletes, plural.